My name is Richard Siddaway. I'm from the UK, one of the PowerShell MVPs from the UK, and I'm also a director for PowerShell.org. So if you've got any complaints about the conference, don't see Don. Don't talk to me. It's all done. If you've got any positive feedback, I'm more than happy to talk to you. Last year, Jason Helmick, he's the guy with the walking stick and the black shirt, stood up on a Tuesday and introduced me and said, Richard's not from the US, doesn't speak English very well, please go and talk to him to give him some practice. So what I want you all do, and the people who were in my earlier session will know this, go up and greet him with I fit like, and just watch his face. It's a dialect from northeast Scotland, and it just means it's just good morning, but it just help wind him up. He's getting a little bit too complacent. Okay, so this session, it's titled Networking Administration. It really should be the network commandlets. When Windows 2012 came out, there was suddenly a whole bunch of commandlets for working with network adapters, IP addresses, DNS servers, DHCP, firewall, network profiles, you name it, there was a commandlet for it. And there's not been an awful lot of notice taken of them. When I was researching this, there's not many blog posts about it. There's not been much been written about it. Ed did a lovely ebook to introduce them, which I've got download details on the slide for, and I'd recommend that you get that and read it. So I thought it was about time that we had a look at them and give you a flavour. Now, there are an absolute ton of these, and I'm not going to cover them all in 35 minutes, so I'm just going to give you a flavour of the sorts of things that you can do. And that is the most important slide of the week. It's quite flippant, because if you know my background, I've done a little bit with WMI over the years. But if you stop and think about just how much of the functionality that you're working with is WMI based, and an awful lot of what you're going to see this afternoon is WMI based. And what happens is you get a whole bunch of new WMI classes written, take it, wrap it in some XML, save it as a CD XML file, and it publishes as a PowerShell module. And if you come to my session tomorrow, I'll show you how all that works. But for now, we're just going to use them. And the really, really nice thing is they just behave as any other PowerShell module. They sit on your module path, they auto load, you get all of the other stuff. Okay, so to paraphrase from a software company that you may have heard of, what do you want to manage in your network? Adapters, DNS, client server settings, DHCP, firewall, profiles, NAT, connectivity status, network infrastructure with switches. Anybody played with the WMF5 preview? Yeah? Network switches, have you tried those? For some reason, my CTO wouldn't let me install it in practice. These are sport. And the network troubleshooting. So there's a whole bunch of stuff around network administration, or the administration of the network parts of your Windows servers, that you can now do through PowerShell. Great! But what about the pre-Windows Server 2012? You've got command line tools, the usual mixture of syntaxes, and yeah, all right. NetSH, and you've got WMI. WMI works. You sometimes have to jump through a few hoops to get it to work, but it will work for you. It's all so much easier. It's nice, you don't need to think about it. So 2012 and later, there's a tiny bit of difference between R2 and 2012. I think I'm sure they added another module on the networking bunch, but I can't remember which one it was. I think they tweaked a few things around, but this session basically covers 2012 and 2012 R2. And then WMF5, which the preview came out of 2 days after we finished the rewrite for PowerShell in depth for PowerShell 4. So the network switch commandlets were added in that, so that's yet another aspect that you can work with. Mentioned this earlier, it's all SIM-based. Practically all of the networking related functionality is SIM-based. And the nice thing about the CDXML modules is that you get SIM sessions for free. You know, like when you use advanced functions, you get the verbose switch and the debug switch for free. With the CDXML, you get SIM sessions for free, you get as job for free. You don't need to do any coding, it just happens. These modules are available in PowerShell 3 onwards, so that's Server 2012 and Windows 8 and the 8.1 and 2012 R2. They are not available on down-level versions of the OS. So if you install WMF4 on Windows 7, you won't get these because the underlying WMI classes aren't present. It's one of the more common questions that we get in the forums is why isn't such and such available? Well, it's because the WMI class isn't there. And as far as I know, there are no plans to do it. Please note the assuming available after 5.0. That's just me saying that if they decide to do that, it will be exactly the same. It's nothing, it's not an announcement, I'm not telling you what's happening, it's just an assumption. Those are the PowerShell modules, and that's before you install the RSAT tools that will give you DNS Server and DHCP. So you can work with the DNS client settings, network adapters, net connections, you can set up teaming and load balancing, you can work with network switches in Hyper-V, TCP/IP settings, and you've got the troubleshooting pack and the VPN client. So most of what you would be looking for in terms of administering your network, being part of administering your servers, you can do having the net security. That's where the firewall stuff lives. Okay. I'll show references, the usual ones. PowerShell and WMI and PowerShell in depth. Ed Wilson's book, the slides and all of the code will be available. We'll either make it through PowerShell.org or I'll put a link on the blog. The help files are pretty good. There are some really good examples in there, and I recommend that you, as usual, that you look at the help files and work your way through them. Right, so I'll get rid of that. Okay, I'm just going to work through, I've built this demo around a little bit of a scenario, just to make it a bit more interesting, and somebody has been playing and they've broken the machine and they've trashed the networking setup, or you can view it as you've got a brand new machine and you just need to start configuring it. And just to make it a little bit more interesting, it's all on server core, so you can't use the GUI. Nah. Not quite as good an interview question as the other one, but we came up with a great. If you went in the earlier session, if you're ever interviewing anybody, give them a practical test. Disable all of the remoting endpoints, and then ask them to sort out remoting. Anybody who can figure that one out coming in for an interview, give them the job. Okay, let's start with the hardware, with the net adapter module. It's exactly what you would expect. It's for working with network adapters, and you've got the usual set of gets, sets, removes, renames, enable, and so on. So we'll have a look at some of these as a starter. So get net adapter. It shows the adapters that you've got. unlike using the getWMI and Win32 underscore network adapter, you don't get all of the junk. You just get the bits you're interested in. It makes life much easier. The important bit to notice is this IF index number. You know when you're using network adapter and network adapter configuration, you've got the device ID and the index? Forget it. Don't need them. All of these commandlets all work off the IF index, which is the interface index. It's a consistent number to identify the thing all the way through. It makes life an awful lot easier. So you get the usual stuff that you'd expect, the name, you get a description, whether it's up or down or excuse me, doing something in between. There's the MAC address and a bunch of other stuff that you can access. As I said, it's all SYN-based, and if you look at the namespace, it's root standard SYN-v2. This is where all of the new WMI classes sit that have been introduced to support these commandlets. If you have a poke around in there, there's some really, really fascinating stuff. You can do some lovely stuff under the covers by hitting these classes directly. The drawback, they're not documented. But then most of the rest of WMI isn't documented, so there's no real change there. However, how many of you were in Brian Wilhite's session earlier? Get SYN classes your friend. Use it. If you do not use any other WMI class, use that one. It tells you so much about the class. And I think of the change to the SYN commandlets, that was a huge, huge benefit. Okay, so to compare it with the old-style Win32 adapter, you get all that junk that nobody ever does anything with and just gets in the way. So we'll skip past that. I mentioned the interface index. That is available on the old WMI classes, but it's not one of the things that comes through the default formatting, so you have to go hunting for it. Normally you get the device ID. That's it. So you've got a relationship between the device ID and the interface index. You can track this down another way if you go hunting through the registry. I can't quite remember off the top of my head where it is. The relationship is in the registry, but it's a little bit messy because the registry doesn't let. If you put an adapter in and then take it out, the registry remembers that it's been there, and you can't put it back with the same name, and it just gets very messy. You can rename them, so very simply, no prizes for guessing what you use as a command. So, right, so that's now named those to make our standards, so that's one problem out of the way. It's not the... If you've used the old WMI class, you had enable and disable methods. The way the CDXML modules work is that a method becomes a commandlet, so you've got a disable and an enable. It's literally as easy as telling it to disable and the name. It asks you to confirm, so just to speed past that. And the status, I think the status on the default formatting is very, very useful because it gives you direct feedback on what's happening. And we'll put it back because we'll need it later. When you make changes, it sometimes takes just a few seconds for things to come through, so don't be surprised if you use these and you see a slight delay. Okay. How many people love network profiles? Public, private, domain? Why? How many people have had it go wrong and then spent an awful lot of time fixing it? Yeah. And how many people have stood and sat and swore about the whole thing? Yeah. Hate them. You've now got two commandlets that sort it for you. So we've got a get, which tells you what's there, and a set. No prizes for guessing what that does. So These are both set to public. Not a good idea. So we'll change them to private. Once, with these commandlets, once you've moved it to domain authenticated, it doesn't like moving back, but if you're in a domain, that's the way you want it, so I'm quite happy for it to stick there. All you do is give it the network interface number and the what you want it to be, and it goes off and changes it. How easy is that? Yeah? How much time would that have saved you? So the net adapters and the profiles, one side of things. Network adapters aren't much good if they haven't got an IP address, because nobody can talk to them. Nice secure server, but it ain't going to do much work for you. So again, with the module, you've got a whole bunch of stuff for working with the IP addresses, with the protocols bound to the card, and all of that sort of thing. So I'm just going to concentrate on the IP addressing for now. The other thing that's in there that is quite interesting, and I haven't got enough of an environment to demo it, is the route tables. So you can very easily display the route tables and modify the route tables, much easier than using the WMI classes directly. And at one at the bottom, the test network connection, that's quite useful as well. So if we get some IP addresses, 127.0.0.1 is goody. Oh, 169.254. That's not very good. So we better give it some IP addresses. You'll find that most of the commandlets have this address family parameter, and you've got two choices: IPv4, IPv6. You can work with either, and I guess most of you are still using IP4. But the IP6 is there if you need it, and that's just basically a cut down version of what you've seen before, and it'll show you each of the NICs and the IP addresses associated with them. This bit at the bottom, the policy store, you'll see that there's an active store and a persistent store. So active is what's there, what persistent is what it's remembering, it's going to revert to if you're not careful. Usually they're in sync. If they're not, do a bit of investigation and work out what's going on. So to set an IP address, when I first started playing with this caused me more problems than anything else. The fact that when you want to put an IP address on a NIC, you use new net IP address, not set IP address. Once you've got an IP address on, then you can use set IP address. But if you want to put an IP address on, you've got to use new. But again, it's the interface index, give it the IP address, the family. That is quite important because it will throw a wobbly if you don't give it the family. And the prefix length is the subnet mask. You can also do subnet masks in your head, can't you? Yes. Lovely. You do have to know the subnet mask, I'm afraid. It won't work it out for you. But hopefully you've got a nice kind guy in the network. No, there's no network. Can't go in the network team. But you can twist somebody's arm in the network team to sort of subnet mask out for you if you need to. And I chickened out and just went with 24 because it's easy. So that's it. Whack the IP address on. So much easier than using the WMI class methods. I think CDXML is the most awesome thing that they've invented because it just makes these WMI classes so easy to use. It is the classic easy to use scenario. The other thing you need to set is the DNS Server search order. Again, that simple commandlet. Again, it's off the Internet Interface Index. We'll just go back to our standard Win32 class just to see what we can see. And you can see the subnet mask. Again, both formats. You can see the IP addresses, and you can see the DNS server order. If you need multiple DNS servers, you just give it an array rather than a singleton. It's quite straightforward. Skip. Okay, and just see what we can. Sorry, what was that? So, just to show you what I'm going to do. That machine that we've just been configuring, I'm going to ping it. I'm going to attempt using getWMI object to talk to it. I'm going to look at the sim instance. And I'm also going to use getWSMan instance. If you're in the talk this morning, you'll know how much I love these commandlets. And just give them another airing. So, ping works. Sorry, ping. What's WMI going to do? Ping didn't work. It's going to make me wait and wait and wait.
You probably didn't open the hole in your firewall.
Correct. The Windows firewall is going to block it. So you saw that go past fairly quickly. I'll just scroll back up and show you what it meant. So the ping got blocked, the WMI call got blocked with the infamous RPC server is unavailable, and the sim call and the getWSMan instance both went through because they're going over WSMan rather than DCOM, and because you've got remoting enabled because it's Server 2012 R2 and it's all enabled by default, which makes life so much easier for us. You can use sim because it's firewall friendly and it's going up HTTP and it's so much nicer. So we need to sort out the firewall. We could just turn it off, but that would be fun in that. So we've got a bunch of commandlets. You've got the usual get, send, whatever. You can look at these modules yourself for the full thing. Firewall rules, there are hundreds of them. They've all got a display name, tells you whether they're enabled or not, which profiles they're on, whether they're inbound or outbound, and the action, whether it's allow or block. So you can, something like that will give you a much better idea of what's going on. So if you've looked at the firewall, you know that to allow ping, it's the ones with echo in the name. So you can track down which rules you need to enable. It's these file and print sharing echo request. Because wildcards work so nicely, you can just do that. We can see that they're all disabled. Unlike WSMan commandlets, pipeline works on these. So once you've found them, you can just pipe them into setNet with firewall and enable them. We'll do the same for WMI. I'm conscious of time, so we'll whip through these. And the last one is the DCOM. So if we rerun our test, it all works. I love it when a demo comes together. Every time I get to that bit in the slides where it says demo, it's please. The number of times it goes wrong and you stood up here going, yeah, well it does work really, honest.
Sorry, one thing I'm noticing, so when you said enable, you didn't say enable $true, you just said enable true. Is that typical of these commandlets?
Yes. There's always a quirk somewhere. Yeah, everything's the same, but. Yeah, so it's, if you look in the help file, it will, it tells you to use true or false as words, not as a boolean. It's actually a string value that it's expecting, and it's
WMI under the covers.
Yeah, it's just the way it works.
I just had a question on the enabling of the echoes.
Yeah.
Did we do that for like 4 or 6?
There's 4 of them. There's two of them. Two of them were for the Hyper-V communication, and the other 4 were the real ones. If you looked at what I was doing, actually, it just enabled them all blanketly, just for speed through the demo, rather than picking out individual ones. You probably wouldn't necessarily want to do all of them, but you can pick them off individually if you need to.
Thank you.
As I said, there is so much in this topic of the networking commanders that I'm just trying to give you a flavour of it, rather than go into the real minutiae of each of the commanders. We'd be here until a week on Thursday, and I've got to be out of Seattle on Thursday. I'm not allowed to stay. Okay, network connection. I'm going to do this from the other machine. And the reason for that is because of the start demo script, because it uses the command that uses write progress, and that just wrecks the display when you're using start demo. It's one of those things that I keep meaning to fix and never get around to. So, what I'm going to do, I'm going to run test net connection. And then I'm going to run it against Summit Node 2, which is the machine that I was, the server core machine. And then we'll just pick off some bits and pieces of details. If you, actually, let me set it going before I carry on. If you use test net connection by itself, it will test your internet connection. Now, and it, because of the networking here, it actually, we'll let it run through them and go through the results. If you test against a specific machine, it will test the connectivity to that machine. So it's either a general, what's my network doing, can I talk to the world, or can I talk to this individual machine? So to go back through these. So the first one, where we're just testing general network connectivity out to the world, we've got a failure because it can't perform name resolution, and it can't ping out to where it needs to. If you test to an individual machine, because we fixed the firewall, it can ping and it can find out the information it needs, and then you can drill down into the information, and you can see quite bits of stuff about what it's talking to. So you can see the adapters, you can see the IP addresses, you can see the interface index, all of the stuff that would help you talk to that machine and manage it. Very useful. And then you can drill down and you can see actually that's just pulling the DNS record as well. So if you need to test your connectivity to a little bit more depth than just a simple ping, test network connection. Monitoring network statistics. Don't need to go through the performance counters. You can actually get it directly. Network adapter statistics, you can see the bytes received. You know, if you go into the GUI that you haven't got on server core, you get the properties and you see that little table where it shows you how much is going in and out. It's all of that stuff and more. Because if you look at the full amount, there's masses. So you can see the broadcast packets, what's been discarded, multicast, whatever you need to drill down to in terms of the statistics, in terms of what's happening to the NIC on that machine and what it's been bombarded with, you can drill down and look at it. The numbers are cumulative, so if you run that again, the numbers will all have incremented. Any of the areas where there's been traffic, the numbers will have incremented. So you can establish some trending if you need to, and you can work out average bandwidth usage and all of that sort of stuff. I'll leave that as an exercise for homework. If you let me know, I'll mark it week after next. We better bring this second NIC online because we will need it in a minute. I'll just whiz through that because we've done it before. And just to show that we have them. So we've got 101 and we've got 2. There. Now there is a reason for having 2 NICs because I want to go and show you network teaming. That's one of the other modules that we went past. There are 2 modules associated with network teaming, and one of them is for the teaming of the NICs in your Hyper-V hosts that you are presenting to a Hyper-V switch. The other one is for the teaming within the VM. Make sure you get the right one because the VM gets very confused if it thinks that you're trying to set a switch up inside it. If you are going to team the VMs within, if you're going to team the NICs within a VM, you need to run this get the VM network adapter, VM name blah, allow teaming on. It's just a one-off per VM, just so that you can, the Hyper-V is aware that it's going on. To create a team, it's the net LD team commandlets. You're creating something, so it's a new one. It's literally give it a name, give it the network adapters that you want to use. Again, it does confirm on it, so just force it past that. That's it. You've got a team. Your two NICs are now teamed and working. Except it's down. It does take a little while to come through, so you'll now see that you've got a third adapter in there. That is performing the actions of the team, and it's now degraded. It just takes a little while to work through, so we'll just give it a few seconds. Yeah, and it's now up. So it's not an instantaneous change, but it doesn't take a massive amount of time. You can still look at the individual members of the team, and I've only got 2 in here. There's nothing to stop you putting more in. At the moment, they're both set to active-active, and the administrative mode and the status will show you that. And I love that failure reason, no failure. As a status, somebody enjoyed themselves when they wrote that bit. Okay, let's. The reason I'm using ping rather than the thank you test connection is that this times out quicker. So, hang on, we had 2 network cards that we could talk to, but we created a team and now we can't talk to them. That's because we need to set an IP address on the team itself. So, if you look at the IP address, we're back to our favorite 169.254 on team 1. So we quickly set an IP address. Business, we'll set the DNS on it, and we're in now. We now think that we're happy, and we're talking over 10.10.55.103. So all I'm going to do is, unfortunately DNS hasn't quite caught up because it's still trying to go to the 101 address. And remember I mentioned that there's a whole bunch of commanders for working with DNS Server. They're in the RSAT tools, so it's an add Windows feature, RSAT DNS Server. Because it's PowerShell commandlets, that bit is available on Server Core. You wouldn't necessarily have them installed on your every machine going, but just to keep the demo environment small. The thing to remember is there are 2 modules for working with DNS. There's a DNS Server, which allows you to work with zones and resource records and all of that sort of stuff. And there's DNS Client, which allows you to work with the local settings of where your DNS server is, your local cache, and that sort of thing. So you can have a look at the zones, standard set of zones that you'd expect to see in an Active Directory domain. And we want the A-type records in our forward domain, and something that 2 is now 103, so that should have sorted itself out. So we'll just clear the caches and so all I'm doing is clearing the client cache and the server cache and then doing the ping. It does expect you to confirm it, and our ping now works. So once we've given the team an IP address and sorted out DNS, everything's happy, and we can talk again. Talking's good. By default, you create a team in an aggregate fashion, so 10 plus 10 gives me 20, and if that's the way you want the things to work, that's great. The other way you can configure a team is as failover. And if you want to take that, so if you look at this, they're both active. If you want to configure it for failover, all you need to do is pick on one of the NICs and change the administrative mode to standby. I haven't got my head around the way that they report these things, because operational status failed against operational status active on standby. I need to sit and think about this a little bit more, because I'm just having a little difficulty with the logic in terms of what they actually mean by some of this. But the important bits are the failure reasons. That's the quickest way to find out what's going on, and the administrative mode. So if it's active, that's the one you're working through. If it's standby, that's the failover. And if you've got this failure reason, virtual switch lacks external connectivity, that doesn't mean what it says, because you can still talk to it. I'm assuming that that external connectivity is actually out to the internet, but I need to do a little bit more research on that to nail that one down. When I find out what it is, I'll put a blog post up about it. So all of our adapters are up. The team's up, LAN 01's up, LAN 02's up. LAN 01 is our main. So we'll ping from here. So we're talking to that. We'll force a failover by disabling LAN 1. And you can see that it's now gone to operational status failed because the NIC is not present. And standby is now changed to active. And we'll repeat the ping. Still working, so the failover worked very nicely. And you can see that LAN 01 is disabled, LAN 02 is up, the team's still working. You've seen that we can still connect to it, so if you need teaming in a VM, this is the way you do it. Nice and simple. You've done the ping, bring it back online, and it will take just a second to come through. Our network adapter's back up. Team has more, yeah, that's reset itself back to, actually no, if you look at the failure reason, it's now waiting for stable connectivity. So it does take a few seconds just to get its reports correct, even though it's still actually working. If we go back through that, yeah, so we're back up to what we were before we started playing around with it. And that is how network teaming works in VMs with the new network modules. That's just about time. So I've got time for a couple of questions. If it goes beyond that, we can take it outside and have a coffee. But thank you very much for attending. I hope you take something back with it. There are a shed load of toys there for you to play with. Please investigate, please dig into them. If you've got any questions, you can contact me through my blog or leave a question on the PowerShell.org forum. One of us will answer it. Enjoy. Thank you very much. Yes, you can. There is a bunch of stuff in there for doing it, but I didn't put it into the demo. There are some commands for working with the bindings.